Writing in today's Telegraph, former Supreme Court Justice Lord Jonathan Sumption has laid out how lockdown laws have no place for common sense or individual judgment on this very issue. Lord Jonathan Sumption joins us now. Lord Sumption, afternoon to you. Thank you for being with us. And I suppose this particular, there are so many facets and elements, of course, to the whole coronavirus story, but this element of care homes visitation, or the lack of, really does cut to the chase of the problems we are currently facing.
Well, it pits basic standards of human decency and humanity against the desire to contain the epidemic. If you believe that stopping people getting coronavirus is the only thing that matters, then clearly the government is right to issue these inflexible guidelines. My own view is that it's not the only thing that matters. There are lots of things that matter. And for somebody in their 80s, with much less time than the rest of us to live, every month counts, and the quality of their life is at least as important as the quantity. The government is simply obsessed with the death statistics, and this isn't the only thing that matters.
Yeah. And is it, I mean, I guess if you are the government, then it's very easy for us to sit here and pontificate about how it should be. They're making very different calculations, Lord Sumption, one would assume.
They are making the calculation. What are we going to get criticised for? That's not the same question as what's in the public interest.
So you sense this really is political, this idea that you can't go and see your elderly mum or nan is based on politics rather than health?
Of course it is. But I mean, I don't think anyone would seriously deny that. All of these questions of policy involve weighing up different and inconsistent things. Health protection on the one hand, and basic standards of social existence on the other. Now, that's not a scientific question. How much weight you give to human happiness is essentially a political question. And that's the basic problem. Because it's a political question, it's decided by politicians. Very few politicians have the courage to do something that steps out of line. They will simply say, what are we going to get lambasted for?
And that's clearly guiding their decisions on this. And of course, one of the problems, I suppose, with care homes, as well as I said at the beginning, there's a sort of a patchwork of rules. There's not one set rule in one care home that follows through to all of the others. It does sort of differ but overarchingly, that the government advice, I suppose, would be what would guide those various authorities or individual care homes.
In practice, that is so. Care homes are regulated institutions, and although government guidelines do not have the force of law, they may effectively be given the force of law by regulators. Moreover, most people who run care homes are terrified of being held liable. So there's a lot of defensiveness and back covering going on by politicians, by scientists, by managers, and the people who lose out, of course, are individuals in care homes who have their own special needs. Nobody is thinking of what makes this particular person, your grandmother or mine, special. Yeah. They're only thinking of the overall picture. It's a one-size-fits-all approach.
You sat in thousands of court cases in your career and presided over some tough decisions during your time in that role. Did you ever come across a situation where somebody died of loneliness?
Well, I didn't personally know, but it's well established that people do. Dementia deteriorates very, very rapidly if you're deprived of social contact. The research produced by the Alzheimer's Society is really instructive on this point. And people are dying because they have no external stimulation. But of course, the government isn't as troubled by that as the prospect of their dying of COVID, because COVID comes on daily statistics, which are produced with a fanfare of trumpets before us all the time, whereas dementia happens obscurely and quietly in care homes, and people are less likely to criticize the government for it. But to any humane person, they're just as important.
Yeah, absolutely right. And do you think, I mean, if you could just put your legal hat on for 1 second, Lord Sumption, do you think that if somebody wanted to mount a legal case to say, actually, I should be able to hug my mother, would they have success with that?
I don't think they would. This is essentially a political judgment. It's not one that the government can shuffle off to the courts. That means it's particularly important that they should get it right. They haven't done it so far.
I mean, they've got it horribly wrong. You will also be familiar with some of those scenes of people, going to see their elderly parents, speaking through plate glass windows, standing across a car park, waving from a bridge, for goodness sake. This isn't the world we should be existing in, is it?
My own family. This is happening not just to one or two people. It's happening to hundreds of thousands across the country.
Do you see an end to this?
I hope I do, but goodness knows what we will be served up at next. I very much fear that the next item on the agenda after Christmas is the government saying, well, we're so close to a vaccine that we can behave in this insufferable way for just a few months longer, and people will put up with it. And the terrible thing is, they probably will. That doesn't make it better.
Yeah. On the wider issue of regulations, I know you've talked a lot about the slightly upside down Alice in Wonderland world that we all currently exist in. I mean, again, I'm sure you will say that this is politically driven as much as anything else. The government, however, say that it's scientifically driven. They point to those graphs. I've lost track of how many graphs I've looked at in the last 6 or 7 months. And they point to those peaks and those areas of concern, and they say this is the evidence. This is why we have to take these decisions. It's not political. It's based on science.
Well, it's not evidence. Most of these things are mathematical models. They extrapolate into the future on assumptions which are not explained and are completely unverifiable. And that is why a very high proportion of them have been shown to be wrong. The slides that were used at the Prime Minister's press conference announcing the current lockdown were frankly a disgrace. They've been criticised by the UK Statistics Authority and effectively withdrawn by Chris Whitty. Now, that is a truly shameful state of affairs.
Agreed.
It looks as if the Prime Minister was bounced by this material. He's never been famous for looking at dossiers in great detail. It looks as if he was bounced by these alarmist and actually false forecasts into making a decision which was not justified.
Lord Sumption, we appreciate your time, sir. Thank you. We will speak again, I hope. Lord Jonathan Sumption, former Supreme Court Justice, author and historian. Well, you heard his words. He's not messing around there. Straight to the point. This is political, and of course that would encompass the care home conundrum that we're talking about here. This is based on politics. The government don't want the headlines. They don't want those additional numbers. I'm already hearing commentators elsewhere absolutely losing their sugar, as I seem to say, on the issue of that 50,000 number. They talk about it as if this is 50,000 people that would all be alive and well had coronavirus not been on the scene at all. And it's not, nobody wants any badge that has 50,000 deaths written on it under their watch. I get that. This is a pandemic. There are casualties of it. There are people that are vulnerable to disease, to pandemics and the like, who will clearly find themselves susceptible to something like coronavirus more than other people, hence the reason why we get a daily death toll. Every time I see that, again, the same voices on social media saying, look, the government has killed these people. And it's interesting that Sumption there, Lord Sumption, telling us, well, actually the government are scared witless of these headlines. That's why we've got restrictions like the care homes. And if that is your story, that's who I want to hear from on this section as well.